So, bore da pawb, welcome everyone to this Wen Cafe, which is officially to launch our coalition campaign, Make Care Fair. And I'm Catherine Fuchs, the Director of Women's Equality Network Wales, and our vision is a Wales free from gender discrimination. Hosting these Wen Cafes is just one of the ways we gather the lived experience of women and put those lived experiences forward to both Welsh Government and other policymakers to make sure we achieve our vision of a Wales free from gender discrimination and get those changes that we need to see for women to thrive in Wales. When Wales is a membership organisation, we're made up of 105 organisations, and also we have individual members, and the stronger we are, the more members we have. So please do join Wen Wales if you're not already a member, because if you join us, we will have a louder influence, a louder voice, and be able to influence much more. So I'm delighted to welcome our panelists. We have the Deputy Minister for Health and Social Services, Julie Morgan MS, who I'm going to come to, and she will speak shortly after my introduction to the campaign. We've also got Nkechi Dawson, who's the policy lead at Rees Council Cymru. Welcome. We've got Claire Morgan, Director of Carers Wales. Welcome, Claire. And finally, Sarah Rees, who is Head of Oxfam Cymru. So after we've heard from the Deputy Minister, just to tell you how this is going to run this morning, in case you haven't been to a Wen Cafe before. So we're going to hear from the Deputy Minister, then we're going to hear some contributions from our panellists, go back to the Deputy Minister briefly before she has to leave at 11:30, and then we'll carry on the discussion and you'll be able to ask your questions. So just some background to the campaign so you know why we're doing the Make Care Fair. I knew I was going to do that tongue twister. Make Care Fair campaign in Wales. Caring has come up regularly as a core issue for us at Wen Wales. Whenever we're hosting a Wen Cafe on topics from climate change to political representation, care has always come up as a barrier to women getting more involved and women achieving their full potential and bringing women out of poverty. So caring affects almost every aspect of women's lives, and we all think it sits at the heart of so many stubborn inequalities that we continue to experience. And women continue to carry the brunt of caring responsibilities. And many of our members and those in the audience today, I know, have caring responsibilities themselves, either as a parent, by providing care to an elderly parent, support for relatives, or as workers in childcare or social care, or a carer to a disabled child, for example. And all these challenges around care are all interconnected, if you think about it. So unpaid carers are propping up a strained social care system. Social care and childcare workers are underpaid and undervalued, and that leads to high staff turnover rates and gaps in provision. And then this prevents unpaid carers and parents with childcare responsibilities from accessing support. So we and many organisations have been working tirelessly, probably in an individual way, trying to work to solve this care conundrum. And we just haven't seen the change that we would like to see around childcare and around unpaid care. And that's why we joined with the organisations here on this call to try and push this campaign. So we've got a steering group that's looking at care from different perspectives, because everything we do at Wen, we like to do in partnership. And our steering group includes Carers Wales, Rees Council Cymru, Wales TUC, Chwaraeg and Oxfam Cymru, and we're really delighted and grateful for those organisations to be supporting us in this campaign. And I would say that the one thing you will be able to do at the end of all this is sign up to the campaign and support it yourselves, because we know from our Diverse 50/50 campaign that one of the best ways to achieve change is to get a big coalition of organisations behind that. So I think that's enough from me, and I'd really like to now hand over to Julie Morgan, the Deputy Minister, for her contribution. So thank you very much. Over to you.
Diolch, Catherine, and as Deputy Minister for Social Services with responsibility for care, I'm really delighted to be able to be here right at the beginning of this meeting and to make some introductory remarks. Thank you very much for your kind invitation. Diolch am eich gwahoddiad caredig. And I want to start by saying, you know, very clearly from the government point of view that care matters. It's an integral part of our society from birth through to the end of life. And I acknowledge the essential, immensely valuable and crucial role undertaken by all those who care. So as the Minister, I'm responsible for childcare, social care and unpaid care in Wales. And I take all those responsibilities extremely seriously, and the government is trying to address all those areas. Childcare is a key priority for the Welsh Government, and we are committed to encouraging the sector to grow, and we want to move to affordable childcare for all in Wales. Because we know how important childcare is, because it enables parents, especially mothers, to work, supports a thriving economy, and allows us better to tackle poverty and reduce inequalities. I do think a childcare strategy is an integral part of a poverty strategy. And we also know that most of our childcare workforce, indeed most caring, are women in most of the caring jobs. And so the sector is absolutely key for supporting families and for encouraging employment for women. So we work to address childcare as well as to ensure the sustainability of the sector, which is so key to supporting women to work. Now, we know that we've had the announcement from the spring budget from the Westminster government about their plans for childcare, which will not obviously be coming into force for some time, and we are analysing what that will mean for Wales and what further we can do in terms of childcare. But in September last year, we expanded our childcare offer to support parents who are in education and training. And we do think it's really important that that offer goes beyond people who are employed, that it is now with education and training, and will enable even more mothers to be able to leave the home and increase the disposable income of those in work. We are committed to supporting and expanding our Flying Start programme to all 2-year-olds, with a particular emphasis on strengthening Welsh medium provision. And I really feel that in the Welsh Government, we've always worked very collaboratively with stakeholders. So we've been working very closely with the childcare sector because it's, we have got a problem in terms of getting access to staff in the childcare sector, which I know is true in all the caring sectors. So we have been working very closely about our expansion to 2-year-olds. And we really do feel that the childcare workforce is an absolutely invaluable asset. And our strategic partner, Social Care Wales, has developed introductory courses to both social care and childcare, and trying to make people more aware of what is actually happening in the social care sector so that we can build up its status, recognise its professionalism. So that's a very important part of the work we're doing. And you may have seen our We Care Wales campaign and the most recent TV and social media childcare campaign, The Children of Wales Are Looking for Childcare Workers. And that campaign has been very effective, and we've had lots of responses to it. But we do know that there are major recruitment and retention challenges. We have delivered the real living wage to social care workers in Wales by making £43 million available for 22-23 and another £70 million for this year. And we are absolutely committed to trying to move the social care workforce up to be on a parity to the NHS workforce. And then I think the childcare is essential, but of course I do think it's very important that we do also refer to unpaid carers, because we're absolutely, we have a strategy for unpaid carers. And in September 22, I launched the Charter for Unpaid Carers. This seeks to help carers and professionals to gain a better understanding of carers' rights under the Social Services and Wellbeing Act Wales. And I mean, the cost of living has hit everybody, but it's hit unpaid carers, particularly hard. So I'm very pleased that we've been able to allocate 4.5 million to continue our successful carer support fund over 3 years to 2025. And since that fund was set up, more than 10,000 unpaid carers have accessed a small grant or information and advice. So I'm determined that we will continue to support unpaid carers, and I'm also very concerned about issues related to respite, and we've allocated £9 million more in order to help respite for unpaid carers. So just to close, I think this event is an absolutely ideal opportunity to discuss all these issues and challenges. And I know that the people who are here today have got a huge wealth of experience to bring. And I think this campaign about making care fair, we support making care fair in the Welsh Government. We're doing our utmost within the financial means that we've got to improve things in the sector. And I'm really interested in hearing what comments people have got to make now in the time I'm here today. Diolch.
Diolch yn fawr, Deputy Minister. That was really helpful to hear all the measures you're putting in place there. So thank you very much. So I'm now going to ask our first question quickly to Sarah Rees, so we can you can hear our first contributions from our panelists and then perhaps respond after they've all spoken. So Sarah, thank you for coming and being part of this campaign. And you're here representing Oxfam Cymru, a charity campaigning to end poverty. Can you explain to us where the links are between your work and this campaign and what you think are the key challenges? Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Yeah, a lot of people do ask actually why Oxfam are working on care, and really without carers, Wales' economy and society would grind to a halt, but carers are much more likely to experience poverty simply because of their role as a carer. It is a joy in Wales that we have an open door to work with Welsh Government, to work in partnership with lots of organisations, and I think, you know, the challenge is open to us. It's really exciting because we can end poverty if we think radically about the way that we could redesign what we do to support all those different areas of care. If we use those levers of power that Welsh Government have in their control to be slightly more radical, then we can impact people's prosperity. You know, it is a scandal that people who care for others, you know, whether that be caring for children, for adults, for people who are sick or have disabilities, that because the care that they do, whether it's paid care or unpaid care, they are more likely to live in poverty. I think the pandemic really showed us how things can change. It shone a light on all of that work and that invisible network of support that we all rely on that comes from care, and it underpins everything that we're able to do as a successful society. And so I think it isn't so much about the problems of what we've got to face, but the real opportunities that we have. You know, it's brilliant. Things like the real living wage for carers, that's wonderful. It's transformational to be able to say those things, that we've got a social partnership in Wales. You know, just this week we've had International Workers' Day or Labour Day. You know, we're constantly shining a light on what these barriers are, you know, recruitment and retention because of wages. You know, that's low, not just in Wales, but across the world. And yet Wales are leading on things like that social partnership and those the real living wage. But there are more things that we could do. You know, we could eradicate any care that's for profit. We could end 0 hours contracts. We know that insecure work is fueled by inequality, and analysis that the TUC have done has shown that Black and women of colour are more likely to be on a 0 hours contract than men. And we can end a reliance on agency staff. And I will stop there because I know that there are other people to speak.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for sharing some of those challenges that we're facing, which are really sobering, and some of your ideas for how we can change that. So this lack of care impacts on equality for women, and of course there's an impact on disabled women in relation to the support they receive from the care sector, and in terms of the racial inequality and the experience of ethnic minority people in relation to care. So with that point, that leads me on really neatly to Nkechi. And could I ask you to outline some of the key challenges that Rees Council Cymru is seeing on care in your 3 minutes?
Absolutely. Thanks, Catherine, and diolch yn fawr everyone else on this call today. It's an absolute pleasure to be invited to speak today, so thank you. So Rees Council Cymru, we engage with Black, Asian, ethnic minority grassroots communities and work directly with local authority, governing bodies and businesses to help promote awareness of racial inequality. And as my colleague just pointed out there, Sarah just pointed out there, the inequalities that Black, Asian, ethnic minority carers face on zero-hour contract is particularly an issue. But one of the challenges that we found at Rees Council Cymru with people in the care sector, which a lot of them have been raising with us, is primarily around discrimination and racism. Those working in care homes, for example, don't feel treated equal with counterparts, often losing hours and being treated differently to other staff members who are on the same scale. Policies and procedures sometimes are not followed correctly either. And this is mainly affecting those who have come to work in the UK. So we've recently held a child poverty workshop for Welsh Government, and childcare was mentioned in our discussions. And parents of young children are struggling to pay for childcare fees or can even find affordable childcare to enable them to attend work. I cannot say that all of this, raising all of these issues in the care sector is going to help solve the problem. However, what we have tried to do is look at where the lack of information, for example, on childcare offers, where there's a gap. For example, we know that there's the 30-hour free allowance, for example. We know that there's the 20% child tax free allowances from birth. And as such, we find that there's also a lack of consistency, for example, on the free school meal allocation in Flying Start areas. So those are the areas that we try and effect real change and provide the information that's needed for those groups. We also have seen a lack of translators as well available to translate these key information, into different languages to reach our targeted minority groups. So again, we're also working to be able to move forward in that light, to be able to better support the community. But I mean, some of the other major issues that we found is access to childcare jobs for disabled people and carers as well. So we see that, the ethnic minority experience in social care research have shown from the EHRC last year that, Black and Asian and ethnic minority people are disproportionately, not in childcare settings. For example, you can scour across the coast of Wales and you go into any childcare setting and it'll be very rare to see someone who is of a different color, for example, if they're not a cleaner. So I think that the reality is that we know that 32.2% of workers in the UK work in health, in the health sector, making the sector, I guess, it has the highest percentage of these workers. So we also know that 47.2% of Black workers work in, the healthcare sector. So again, all of these great initiatives that the Honourable Minister Julie mentioned in terms of, the real living wage, etc., they are all very, very good with the best of intentions and the best of will in the world. But what we do want is tangible changes, real changes that people can see working in their lives. So thank you. On that note, I'll stop there.
Diolch yn fawr, Nkechi. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, really important points like translation and so on that need considering. So now I'd like to hand over to Claire from Carers Wales. So what are the key challenges for unpaid carers at the moment, Claire?
So yes, Carers Wales, we're a membership charity for unpaid carers, people looking after loved ones, friends, neighbours. Actually, the contribution of unpaid carers in Wales is massive. About 10.5% of the Welsh population is an unpaid carer. 58% of carers in Wales are women, and half of the carers care for more than 35 hours a week. So half the carers are doing more than an equivalent of a full-time job. I guess from our perspective, we would summarise the challenges into 3 key areas. The first being social care provision, and the Deputy Minister obviously already alluded to some of the challenges in social care. As a result of those challenges, obviously unpaid carers are picking up the slack in terms of a lack of support. And we know that through our state of caring research that we do each year, that 42% of carers had no break last year. That's massive. You know, that's not even having, you know, a couple of hours off to go and get your hair cut. It's obviously a massive concern to us that with the challenges in social care and health, that unpaid carers are taking on greater responsibilities. I guess the second key challenge, which also the Deputy Minister alluded to, is the financial challenges of the cost of living crisis and the costs of care. So through our research, again, we know 72% of carers are concerned about how they will meet their monthly costs, their monthly outgoings. And we know that a quarter of all carers in Wales are cutting back on heating and eating. You know, 42% is a massive proportion of carers having to choose what they spend their money on and having to cut back on heating and eating. You know, fantastic, completely support Welsh Government's Carer Support Fund. It's brilliant for the 10,000 people who were able to access that, but there's 310,000 unpaid carers in Wales. You know, we really need to enhance the financial support for those carers who are looking after the most vulnerable people in our society. And then the third key area is the health impact as a result of caring. So we know that a quarter of all carers rate their physical health as poor, a third rate their mental health as poor, and we know 22% of all carers feel lonely. And I think that's a critical issue, in that many carers are caring on their own. They feel extremely isolated, they feel set adrift, and they feel forgotten about. So it's absolutely critical that we raise profile within the general population and do what we can within health and social care to make sure that unpaid carers get the much needed support that they need.
Thank you, Claire. So I think we've got some clear challenges set out there from our panellists, Deputy Minister. And I don't know if you would like to respond to some of them, as I know you've got time now. I think one of the just before 11:30 you've got time. So a few of the things that have resonated with me is the points about the workforce from Nkechi and diversifying the workforce and the availability of childcare. But yeah, some of those points that Claire and Sarah made also both really important. So if you would like to come back on any of that and perhaps show how Welsh Government can respond to those things, Deputy Minister, that would be fantastic.
Yes, and well, thank you very much for those contributions, and I think they were very powerful, and they were a great spurring us on in terms of what you know, what we're able to do. And you know, so I've got no disagreement with anything that was said by the three panelists. Absolutely agree with them, and we are doing what we can. Just to pick up some of the points, the point of profit, you know, not of use of trying to use services that are not for profit. Now we have made a commitment that in children's services, children's care services, that we will move to a not-for-profit system. And I just wanted to say, you know, in response, you know, that I'm behind that pledge for children's services, but it is very difficult to do because we're in the process of doing that at the moment. Because, you know, in the whole of the social care system, you know, in terms 80% is in the private sector. So there's no way that we are able to do this quickly and easily because we've obviously got the private providers who are actually providing care at the moment. And so we have to do it in a way that is very sensitive to the children that we care for. And of course, with the adult services, they are very unbalanced as well. And we'd certainly like to see a move soon towards a more balanced provision, more provision in local authorities, more provision by, you know, cooperatives, by micro businesses, by non-profit making organisations. So I think that is a very important pledge that we have. So I'm very glad that that was raised as something that that I think it was Sarah raised that, wasn't it, as something that we should move towards. And we are moving towards it, but I just have to stress it's not easy to do when the provision is provided for vulnerable people at the moment by the private sector. Then I take on board entirely all the issues about the lack of representation from Black, Asian and minoritized ethnic people in some parts of the care system, and the difficulties that people do experience. I have listened to some care workers who have told me of the discrimination that they have felt in the care system. So I have listened to that directly, and there are procedures in place that should not allow this to happen, but nevertheless I know that it does happen. So as you all know, Wales has got an anti-racist strategy that we want to eliminate racism by 2030, which is a huge undertaking, because we know that racism is endemic, and we are recognizing that. So that's why our strategy is anti-racist, and it's a very it's very challenging, and we are working very hard at that. And in terms of it is great that the Rees Council Cymru is working to ensure that the information is there available for people in the Flying Start areas, and the issues about preschool meals to make people know what they are entitled to. But we decided we would expand our 2-year-olds provision via Flying Start, because we felt that that provides such a sort of high quality childcare, and is linked with the existing provision with other services as well. And it has, the research has shown that it is very successful in terms of trying to equalize things. So that is going to expand for all 2-year-olds, and that's not just people in employment, education or training, it's for everybody. So that is universal provision.
Thank you. Sorry to just jump in there, Minister, but so you're saying there are plans to extend the hours for 2-year-olds so it better supports employment and gets single parents out of poverty? You're basically saying it will expand.
We will providing some free childcare for 2-year-olds for everybody in Wales, all 2-year-olds in Wales. So that would be universal provision, not linked to employment, training or education. And that is our plan. That's what we're doing at the moment. That's what we're actually involved.
But as I understand it, Sarah might want to come in, but as I understand it, that's only affecting a few thousand children at the moment. So I'm wondering how we're going to broaden that out and what the plans are.
Yes, it's over the next 2 years. We've got, I think, reaching out to an additional 10,000 children. We've already, in the first phase of expansion, reached out to about 3,000 more children. That's probably the figure you're thinking of, is that 3,000, the ones that have already had it. Whereas from April now this year, we'll be moving out to another 10,000 children over a period of 2 years. And at the end of that time, we'll probably have covered, I don't know, about 60% of 2-year-olds. And then the final phase will be to hopefully reach all 2-year-olds. But as I say, that's only for 2-year-olds. We're doing that at the moment. We have got a longer term vision of where we'd like to go, but I think it's important to say that we are actually doing this expansion at the moment, while the Westminster, and obviously our childcare offer is much well, it is better than the English childcare offer, because we're for 48 weeks a year rather than 38 weeks a year, and of course we include employment and training. So there are quite a lot of differences really between the two offers as they stand.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. That's really helpful. Is there anything else you'd like to contribute before you have to leave?
Before I go, yeah. Well, just to echo, a great deal of support for what Claire is saying about the, what unpaid carers, what they put into the into everything, in Wales is absolutely amazing. And thanks to the carers voluntary sector for the great efforts that they made. And again, we have started to make progress. We have well, we've mentioned the 4.5 million, we've mentioned the 9 million for respite, and the work that is done by the local authorities, where we've raised the amount of money that they receive. But it's it's never enough. And I'm certainly aware that it's not enough. None of what we're doing is enough. We'd like to be able to do, you know, a huge amount more. But I would challenge whoever has said we weren't being radical enough, because we are tackling the profit issue. You know, that's pretty radical. And we have introduced the real living wage, which again, I think is absolutely essential, but we've got to go higher than the real living wage because it doesn't really compete with some other organisations. So thanks ever so much, and I'm you know, really very supportive of this, and well done on setting up this cafe, and I really appreciate any feedback, you know, that we can have in the Welsh Government, because we're obviously all thinking on the same lines of where we want to go, and we're doing what we can in the circumstances we're in.
Diolch yn fawr, Deputy Minister. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will definitely report back to you the full outcomes of this event.
Diolch.
So thank you. Diolch yn fawr. Bye-bye. So, yeah, I guess that has very clearly kind of shown the different challenges we all face. I'm about to ask our panellists the second question, but please, in the audience, do put your questions in the Q&A by using the Q&A button. If you've got any questions you'd like to ask our panelists, we will be coming to you soon for your questions, and I'll read those out if you pop them in the Q&A, so thank you. Yeah, the challenges are huge, aren't they? And so what we want to explore next is some of the solutions, and you know, what I'd like us to explore now, and we're going to start with Nkechi, please. What are the solutions? What can we do? And what should the Welsh Government do? Or perhaps there's even a role here for the UK Government or other actors, local authorities. So first, Nkechi, what do you see are the solutions?
Thanks, Catherine. And it's again, it was really great to hear from Julie some of the solutions already, you know, taking place. And I think it's phenomenal work going on behind the scenes. It just needs to be brought to life and really showing as affecting change in people's lives. I think one of the real things we can do is create forums where people can discuss their experience of living in poverty and working in care. I feel like it's still kind of a taboo topic whereby people don't feel that they can actually talk about living in poverty. There are people in full-time jobs, caring roles that are actually living in poverty. And I think whilst the intention might be good from the government, and it goes without saying that the government are doing extraordinarily well in comparison to some other organization, but it isn't going far enough, I'm afraid. There are levels of inconsistency, you know, for different people in different areas of Wales. For example, people in the valleys, parents have expressed to us at Rees Council Cymru that it's not worth going to work due to the cost sometimes, you know, due to the lack of information as well on how to obtain childcare provision shared by the government. It, you know, it does frustrate a lot of parents because they don't have the time to look for that information because they just don't know where to go, and actually it's more time consuming doing that. You also have the, you know, imagine the experience for refugees, you know, where there is a language barrier. As I said, you know, Rees Council Cymru cannot facilitate every single translator. This provision needs to be alongside of any, you know, manifesto or anything that the Welsh Government is doing in terms of the diversity that actually exists within Wales and across Wales as well. And I guess the link between that and people's lived experience and really understanding that we're all very different, but we're all in a very similar situation, i.e. the cost of the living crisis. I think, again, something else that the government could do as well is really go out there into those communities and survey, conduct surveys so that, you know, pulse surveys, if you like, so that people can get their views across. How does this provision make them feel? You know, the lack of having that information. Now that they do have the information, what are the next steps, for example? You know, we know that there are returning mothers, for example, who go back to care, you know, to their care work, and they might as well have stayed at home because it's not worth them working the number of hours that they're working and then having to, you know, put all of their finances back into childcare because they have 3 or 4 children. So again, that approach needs to be quite consistent. And really delving into people's understanding as well of the rules and the law and everything else that's going on in terms of, you know, the age 2 offering that the minister mentioned, you know, being extended to, you know, the first tranche of 10,000 and then 3,000, sorry, and then 10,000, and then the rest of the children, 2-year-olds in Wales. Again, that's information that's news to me. That's information that, many new mothers, for example, would really be useful. So maybe following up the current campaign, existing campaign, with some of those subliminal messages so that people feel heard and listened to.
Great, thank you, Nkechi. And Claire, if you would like to share what you think the solutions are, that would be fantastic. It's something, funnily enough, I'm grappling with at the moment. My dad's just come out of hospital. He doesn't live in Wales, but I've been on the phone to the county council where he lives this morning, trying to organise a carer at like 9 o'clock this morning. And yeah, it's really stressful, and it often falls on the women in the family to do this. And so I'd love to hear, Claire, what you think the solutions are.
Yeah, I think, the way I look at the health and social care system in Wales is that it's a 3-legged stool, with one leg being health, the other leg being social care, and the third leg being unpaid carers. And without any of those legs, the stool is obviously going to topple over. The issue is that when it comes to planning around health and social care, and then investment in health and social care, that third leg is often overlooked or taken for granted. And I think we need to ensure that unpaid carers are seen as absolutely fundamental in planning health and social care, so that in every element of the system, you're also thinking about the implications on unpaid carers and what support that they will need to support vulnerable people within that system. At the moment, that's just not happening, and so that would be my key ask, my key solution. In addition to that, I think there's a lack of investment in local carer-specific support services. So local authorities and third sector organisations trying to do what they can within limited resources to support unpaid carers to fulfil their day-to-day responsibilities. But I think a lot more could be done around that. Moving on, recognition and support of unpaid carers in the NHS is much lower than it should be. And I think if we had better identification of carers when people are diagnosed with a condition, or when something happens, whether that be through a GP surgery or whether that be at hospital discharge, to ensure that unpaid carers are aware of the support that is available across Wales, and that they're not on their own, that they can ask for support, and there are legal mechanisms in place for them to have a right to a carer's needs assessment and what have you, to see in what ways they can be better supported in their caring role. And the other thing I would say is improvement in recognition of unpaid carers in the workplace. So from our perspective, we have the Employers for Carers scheme, where we work with employers to ensure that they're much more carer aware within the workplace. So having workplace policies around flexible working, carers leave. I was fortunate to meet the Friday, and I raised with him the issue that the carers leave bill is currently going through Parliament, which for the first time will give unpaid carers legal rights to carers leave to support those they look after. Unfortunately, it's only a very small amount at the moment, so 1 week unpaid, but we'll obviously push for that to be improved as and when we can. But yeah, I think generally we need much more recognition and awareness of unpaid carers in the general population as well. I think people assume that people look after their friends and family because that's their family duty. But actually, as I said, half of unpaid carers work in the equivalent of a full-time job, and we need to ensure better support for them.
Thank you so much, Claire. Yeah, that's really good roundup of all the solutions on unpaid care, and congratulations. I don't know if you met the Prime Minister as part of getting an award or something, but congratulations on that. Nkechi, so sorry, Sarah, over to you on what do you think the solutions are? And just to let you know, there are some questions in the chat, and if you want to type in a response, you can do that. You can type in an answer, but we will also you will also get a chance to answer.
Okay, I'll jump in there. I think Claire deserves an award, whether she got one or not, for her work that she does with unpaid carers. I think the solution for me is communication, and just coming back to a few points that Nkechi made and that the Deputy Minister made around childcare. There's a real lack of understanding when it comes to childcare. We've got a really complex and confusing system. So what's being talked about for 2-year-olds is 2.5 hours of care Monday to Friday that is really set and specific, and it's aimed at developing the child, and that's fantastic. It's really important that we have that we ensure all children have that fair access to a decent start in life. But that is not childcare. That's totally separate from when childcare that's required by parents because they need to work in order to have an income. And so I think we have to, for a start, be really, really clear on those two separate matters, because they're often conflated as all being childcare, but it's really quite different. And what you get at each setting and who's able to access each setting is also complex and confusing. And also something else that Nkechi mentioned was around what we know and what we find out about care. And just a conversation we had as part of this coalition was, where is the advertising on childcare? Where is it being aimed? Because lots of it is places where it's aimed at mothers. Well, if we want fathers to understand childcare and to bring that equality matter back into it, then is it being aimed at the places where fathers would read about things, maybe where they'd find out about things as being a new dad, maybe in the workplace, could that information be in the same place when they're looking at what leave they'd be able to take as a parent? So that's childcare specifically. And I think just on that matter, it is worth saying that 1 in 5 children in Wales are growing up in poverty. And the main issue that we've got, particularly for single parents, is the cost of childcare. We're looking at the moment around £60 to £70 a day. There is no point in returning to work when you know that your wage might not even cover that, let alone the cost of getting to a job, of any uniforms people have to buy. If you have to go out to work, if you work from home, you've still got to have that childcare. And it's really, really important, particularly for single parents, because they really aren't able to access work without that childcare. And 2.5 hours a day for 2-year-olds is wonderful for children, but it's not helping parents, and it's not going to help raise their income. And then just coming on to solutions around social care and unpaid care. One thing I wanted to mention is the National Care Service for Wales, and that's something that the Welsh Government are looking at the moment. And that's a golden opportunity for us, particularly on social care and unpaid care, to really focus on what we can do to bring that change. And there was something that last year I was in a conversation. It was a budget consultation event, and I happened to be sat next to someone who is, the leader of the Welsh Ambulance Service, and money is being given to the ambulance service to make sure that we've got ambulances to get people to hospital. That's absolutely crucial. And then I talked about care, and he came back and said, we can throw money at ambulances as much as we want, but if we can't get people out of the other end of the system, and the system that's reliant on social care workers, on unpaid care workers, then infrastructure like ambulances is useless. And so we have to have that parity of what we call infrastructure, and the work that social care workers do, that unpaid carers provide. That's just as important infrastructure, and we have to bring that balance. So I think the solution that we have that's brilliant is campaigning and working together. We're all talking about flexible working, for example. That can have a greater impact on social care workers. That can be helpful for parents, and it can also enable social care, unpaid carers, for example, to enter into work or to balance their caring role with paid work. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and for all those contributions. I'm really conscious we've got some fantastic questions in the chat, in the Q&A box. So I'm going to ask Claire to answer our first question, if she'd like to, around the person who became an unpaid carer at the age of 18. I won't read out the whole question, Claire, but if you can allude to the question in your answer, that would be brilliant.
I thought it was a spot on in terms of the reflections, and actually something that's reflected a lot in what we hear from unpaid carers. So yeah, I jumped at the chance of answering that one. One of our key areas of work at Carers Wales is working with carers who want to return to the workplace after a period of caring. And it's often the case that well, both people have had very relevant skills from before they were caring, but also the skills that they've gleaned while they've been caring. I think a lot of people underestimate the skills that you get, not only obviously in terms of personal care and what have you, but negotiation, communication, being assertive. There's actually a lot of very relatable, transferable skills that people can take into the workplace. So we've been, in fact, literally this morning, funnily enough, before this meeting, I met with representatives of the Department of Work and Pensions and spoke to them about how we can be increasing support for unpaid carers in job centres throughout Wales, and how we can ensure that they're getting the support that they need relevant to their specific needs and some of the barriers that they may have in terms of getting into the workplace. We've also worked with Chwarae in the past and have resources on our website around things like writing an application, doing an interview, those sorts of skills to help people build their confidence. And we've also taken small groups of carers and very much worked on their confidence, what their goals are for themselves beyond their care and responsibilities, and where that's returned to work, how we can support them to do that. And also actually self-employment is an option as well for a lot of unpaid carers who perhaps don't want to go back into an employed situation. The other point that she raised around training for the role, I think is absolutely spot on. Is something that I say a lot, actually, particularly through the pandemic, where a lot of unpaid carers took on responsibilities that traditionally professional medical or social care people would have undertaken, was left to carers. And I think that there seems to be an increase in reliance on unpaid carers to do some of those things. So, for example, manual handling, medication management, changing dressings. We know that unpaid carers are changing catheters, all sorts of different things. And I completely agree with the question around we need to get better quality training for unpaid carers. And I've been having discussions with Social Care Wales, who obviously oversee paid care workers across Wales, and saying, can we get unpaid carers to access some of the courses, the short courses that you provide for paid care workers? And so we're hoping to roll that out during this next year.
So it sounds like that question, I should really get in touch with you, Claire. If you want to put your email in the chat. I don't know if the chat is accessible and everyone can see the chat, or if not, the team can do that, because I think it sounds like you can give her some really good help. So the next question is around someone working with job seekers and employers around social care and childcare roles. She said, in fact, I think it's a bit more of a comment, really. It is useful to understand the barriers people face and the reasons for people not moving into employment, in particular social care and the cost of childcare. There are lots of complex issues that are intertwined, and Kerry agrees with Claire that we need employers to recognise and adapt working conditions to support carers and parents. That's something we at WEN most definitely do. And any staff that are parents and need to collect children at the end of the day, drop off, whatever, doctor's appointments, we operate an incredibly flexible working policy, and that would be the same for any care, for whatever type of care it is, whether you've got children or anyone else you care for. That is so important. I think employers have a huge role to play. I'd like to come to the next question, which is from Kaylee, who says carers are completely burnt out. Respite lists are so high and thresholds even higher. And there are very limited out of school activities. That's something I've noticed actually since COVID. After COVID, kind of a lot of the after school activities which enabled you to carry on working a bit longer have stopped. This person is a carer herself and was unable to work for 13 years. And she was given 4 weeks to find a job when her son accessed residential care before all caring benefits were stopped. That's dreadful. So Kaylee's employer has been really great because they've allowed her to access full-time work and take time out to collect her son. But she questions how many other employers are as understanding and flexible. And I see Sarah's got her hand up to answer that question.
Thanks. I thought I'd come in there. I think what's really important is we're talking about lots of different things that people need that are, specific to day-to-day life. But one of the most important changes that we need to make is for particularly women to claim the rights, and particularly workplace rights. Flexible working should be open to everyone. It isn't just something aimed at parents or mums to balance, school drop-offs and work. It's for everybody, and it can benefit everybody. And I think one thing that we still talk a lot, because of that collective trauma that we went through, about what happened in lockdown. And lockdown really did show us what carers do and how essential that work is. But what we maybe need to do now, and we haven't, because we've all been trying to cope with life as it's changed, and it hasn't gone back to normal. There's lots of things that are really different, and particularly things like that. There's almost an expectation in some places that, because you've all homeschooled, now you can work at home if there's an inset day with your child there. There's no need for that extra care, when actually that care is essential, just as essential as anyone else who needs to be looked after while someone is doing a job. And so I think that's something that maybe we need to consider in what's missing that was normal before, that isn't there now, and how we're trying to cope, because I think that's making a lot of people feel more burned out. And like Kaylee is saying, there's lots of pressure on people, to kind of go back into work. Because of the cost of living, work doesn't pay for quite a lot of people. And so there's a lot of issues maybe we need to consider that are aimed at how we're living now compared to what it was like before lockdown.
Absolutely, very good point. I'll bring you in just a second, Nkechi. I just wanted to make another reminder to all the panelists on the call to fill in our survey, especially those who've and around the campaign. I mean, there was a link put in the chat earlier about, because what we're really keen on is gathering your lived experience, so you can get involved in the campaign and share these experiences that you've shared here with us on the Q&A. So please do that. But Nkechi, I know you wanted to make a comment, and there's also a question that I accidentally missed, so I'm going to ask that as well, so you can reflect on that in your answer. So you can come back on what the previous question, and then this one is from Lucy, who's saying she's leading on work to support individuals to progress in work, increasing their hours or their wages per hour. And one of the barriers is lack of childcare provision, especially over the weekend. So Sarah touched on this. What can we do to help expand this childcare provision and promote recruitment into childcare and social care roles? So over to you, Nkechi.
Thanks, Catherine. And that was exactly the question that I wanted to answer. So thank you, Lucy, for spotlighting that. That is such an essential fact to bring up, because the reality is that childcare provision being available Monday to Friday is great, but what about parents who work over the weekend? Or, what about parents who are studying and need to go away on a conference or something over the weekend? I know childcare providers, for example, childminders who have extended opening hours, throughout the weekend. However, that's accosted higher than what it would be during the week. So again, there is inconsistencies there. And also in terms of, promoting recruitment into childcare, I think it's about, advertising and promoting it as a job that's appealing, a job that, is beneficial in terms of what you get out of it, the feel good factor, but equally the enrichment of that child. Yeah, I used to have a childminder when I was 10 years old. She's now in her 70s, and I still speak to her every birthday, every Christmas, and it's things like that. Just recognizing that, this person was like a mother to me, and they're absolutely essential in terms of my upbringing and, my values, etc. So I think that's a really good question. But in terms of promoting it, it's to make it something that's appealing, because it's an invaluable experience to be able to be part of someone's life, their upbringing, and to be able to influence and effect real change in people, real positive changes in people's lives.
Okay, thank you, Nkechi. There are two other questions as we come to the end, and I'm just going to read them both out and ask Claire to come back, and if there's time, Sarah. So how much do you think, from Laura, how much do you think the issue of childcare, oh heck, it just moved. How much do you think the issue of childcare and caring are still considered women's work, and how can we reduce the discrimination and barriers that women face as a result?
I think it's a really, really important point, and I completely agree that that is an issue that is still seen as women's work. Obviously we did a huge amount in terms of encouraging women to go out to work, but we didn't do a huge amount encouraging men to stay at home to take on some of the caring responsibility. So I think until it's seen as equal, we're probably going to still have issues, even with things like the pay of social care, because it's seen as traditionally women's work and women are paid less than men. Having said that, it's interesting when you look at the statistics, because in Wales, I think I said earlier, we've got what, 58%, I think it is, 58% of women in Wales are unpaid carers, and actually that's less than in England. So we've actually got more of an equal split in Wales than we have in England in terms of the gender balance on unpaid care. But yeah, I think that we've still got a lot to do in terms of ensuring that it's seen as collective responsibility to do unpaid care, rather than it falling traditionally to women. So I think it's a really good point.
Thank you, Claire. And then I just want to bring in a question from Claire from PACey Cymru. PACey is the Professional Association for Childcare and Early Years. Thank you for being here, Claire, and for your question. I won't read out the whole question because I'm sure, Sarah, you can see it. But the main thrust is there's been a decline in some forms of childcare, for example, childminders, which is a concern, and any approach needs to support existing providers and support continuity of care for children and parental choice. And Claire also makes the comment about use of Flying Start as a vehicle makes a two-tiered approach, and what can we do about that? So I'd love your thoughts on that, Sarah, and I'm afraid then that's going to be our final input this morning so that we finish on time. So over to you, Sarah.
Thanks, and thank you to Claire for the question and the examples that she's given in that question. I think it comes back to the point that I was making earlier about communication. We have to be really clear, and we have to push Welsh Government to be clear on where they're talking about early years education for 2-year-olds and childcare under the childcare offer for 3 to 4-year-olds, because these are all being conflated into the same thing. There was an example I gave of, when the big announcement was made on the UK budget, people don't understand what's devolved and what isn't devolved, and so there was someone who went to their nursery at the end of the day saying, well, I've seen all this on the news about childcare, so when are my bills going to be free? There's that bigger piece of communication that we need to do to say, actually childcare is devolved, it's the Welsh Government responsibility, these are the things that are available to everyone, these are the things that are available, and they're under specific sets of things that you have to access. And I think it really is about what we can do as this network and under this this campaign. So one thing that I know that we really want to do is talk to parents and talk to childcare workers, including the example there that was given on childminders. We want to know what parents want, and we want to know what childcare workers need in order to say to Welsh Government, what you're doing is relevant to that and is reflecting the needs of those essential workers and of the parents and of the children. Coming back to what Claire was saying about those 3 legs, we've got what parents need, we've got what the child needs, and we've got what the workers need, and those 3 things have to come together, and what Welsh Government provide has to be looking at all of those needs. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And I just want to say a huge thank you to all our panelists, because I know Nkechi has to run off. But so please do feel free to leave, Nkechi, while I just sum up. A huge thank you for your contribution today. It's been brilliant. And I just wanted, diolch yn fawr, thank you. So just to round up, everybody, thank you so much for your questions and your thoughts. Apologies if we haven't been able to answer every single question. I hope I didn't miss any though. So some key events that are coming up for us. It's Carers Week, the 5th to 11th of June, which would be great you all know about. And this will be a chance for us all to champion this campaign. We're going to be raising awareness with MSs actually during that week. It's like a Senedd internal launch of the Make Care Fair campaign and a briefing. So that's happening that week to MSs. But we've also got an open event, which is our cross-party group on women, which is going to be women and unpaid care. and Claire is going to be our speaker, and that's on the 9th of June. So please do put that date in your diaries. We'd love to see you there. Just another reminder to fill in the form, please, and do sign up as an audience member. Please do sign up to this campaign, because the more of us that put our voices together and will enable us to make the change we want to see. I mean, the key things I've taken out are it's going to take a while. Oh yeah, and a poll has just popped up on your screen, everyone, so please do answer that. So yeah, it's going to take all of us working together to change care, both childcare and unpaid care. And you know, I think the more we can get together like this and hear lived experience and then push forward to the Welsh Government what our asks are, the better. And we will most certainly be doing that after this seminar. We will follow up with Welsh Government with some of the solutions that the team have mentioned today. So huge thank you to all of you, and we really look forward to seeing you again sometime, the next time we do something on care. So thank you to our panelists and our steering group. Brilliant to have you with us today.